The groom left his bride for being too fat, until the alpha vampire said, "I'll take her hand." The sky over the kingdom of Eldoria was heavy with clouds, dark and swollen like a storm waiting to be born. In the heart of the city, the grand cathedral stood tall, its spires piercing the gray sky. Inside, Lady Alara stood before the altar, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the delicate lace of her wedding gown. Her heart had been full of hope, full of dreams about the life she would have with Lord Cedric, the man she had once believed loved her. But that hope had shattered like glass the moment he looked at her with cold, cruel eyes. "Too fat," he had said, his voice echoing through the cathedral like a blade. "I cannot marry someone like you." Alara's cheeks burned with humiliation. The entire congregation had heard him, their eyes shifting uncomfortably between the two of them. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like waves in a restless sea. Her family tried to intervene, but Cedric's pride and arrogance silenced all objections. He turned and left, leaving her standing there in silence, the whispers of everyone around her pressing down like chains. She remembered how her heart had cracked the moment he stepped away. All the plans, all the love she had poured into this day, now seemed like dust slipping through her fingers. Every step she had taken toward him felt like a lie, and every smile she had shared now felt like mockery. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to cry in front of the crowd. She lowered her gaze, feeling the eyes of strangers and friends alike weighing down on her. The priest muttered words of consolation, but they were hollow, empty. Alara's soul ached not just from rejection, but from the realization that the world had judged her by what she looked like, not who she was. By nightfall, she returned to her family's old manor on the outskirts of Eldoria. The manor was a relic of the past, its stone walls cold and silent, its corridors echoing memories of long-gone laughter. Alara wandered through the empty halls, touching the worn banisters and faded tapestries, seeking comfort in familiarity. But the manor felt more like a tomb than a home tonight, and the shadows of the rooms seemed to whisper her failures back to her. Days passed in a haze. Alara avoided the eyes of servants and neighbors, hiding herself away from the world that had rejected her. She spent hours staring into mirrors, not to admire her reflection, but to search for answers. Was she truly unworthy of love? Was her heart forever destined to be broken? The mirrors gave her no answers, only her own reflection staring back, pale and trembling, yet stubborn in its presence. And yet, even in her despair, a whisper of something else stirred, a strange, almost imperceptible pull toward the unknown. Rumors had reached the kingdom of a being who ruled not by wealth or birth, but by power beyond imagination. Kale, the alpha vampire of the northern clans. He was a legend spoken of in fearful tones. Some said he was cruel and merciless, others claimed he was capable of extraordinary compassion. No one dared approach him, and yet, for reasons she could not understand, Alara felt a connection forming in her chest, like a faint ember refusing to die. It was on a storm-lashed evening that the world seemed to shift. Rain hammered against the manor windows, lightning split the sky, and the wind carried the scent of wet stone and earth. Alara sat by the fire in the grand hall, wrapped in a heavy shawl, when she heard a sound that made her blood freeze. A soft knock echoed through the empty corridor, a knock that carried authority and power, yet held no threat. Before she could react, the massive doors of the manor swung open. Standing there, framed by the storm, was Kale himself. He was taller than any man she had ever seen, his presence commanding the room even without a word. His dark hair framed a face both cruelly handsome and impossibly sad. His eyes, red as molten garnet, seemed to see straight into her soul. "I have come for you," he said, his voice smooth like silk, yet carrying the weight of centuries. "Lady Alara, will you allow me to take your hand?" Alara froze, unable to respond. Every instinct told her to run, yet every part of her longed to remain. The world outside, the one that had scorned her, seemed distant and meaningless in the presence of this powerful being. She could feel the pull of his aura, the raw strength that radiated from him like a magnetic force. Why would you want me?" she finally whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "I am nothing. I am broken." Kale stepped closer, and the warmth of his presence seemed to defy the cold, stormy night. "You are not nothing, Alara," he said, his voice low but firm. "You are more than the world dares to see, and I see everything you are. Do you not wish to be truly known?" Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. She had spent her life hiding, shrinking herself to fit into a world that demanded perfection, and yet here was someone who looked at her and refused to look away. For the first time she felt seen, not for her weight, not for her appearance, but for the soul that had endured heartbreak and still refused to give in to despair. Kale extended his hand again, and this time, Alara felt the pull stronger, undeniable. She hesitated, then with trembling fingers took it. The moment their hands touched, a strange warmth coursed through her, a mixture of fear and wonder. It was as if a new world had opened before her eyes, a world where power and kindness coexisted, where danger and desire danced together in a delicate balance. "You, you are a vampire," she breathed, awe and fear mingling in her voice. "Yes," Kale said simply, a shadow of a smile touching his lips. "And I have been watching you, Alara. The world may have rejected you, but I will not." The firelight flickered across his sharp features, casting long shadows on the walls. Alara felt a shiver, not of fear, but of anticipation. She did not know what awaited her, or whether stepping into his world would save her or break her further. But something deep inside whispered that this was her chance to step out of the darkness that had consumed her. Kale guided her to the carriage waiting outside, its black wheels glinting under the rain-soaked moonlight. The forest loomed ahead, dark and mysterious, and the road twisted through ancient trees whose branches seemed to reach out like ghostly hands. Alara felt a mix of fear and exhilaration, knowing that she was leaving everything familiar behind. The manor, the city, even her past heartbreak, all of it was fading into the mist behind her. As the carriage rolled through the night, Alara stole a glance at Kale. He sat across from her, eyes unreadable yet intensely focused on her. His presence was overwhelming, almost intoxicating, and she realized that she had never truly felt seen by anyone in her life. Not by her family, not by Cedric, not by anyone. And now, in this strange, dark world, she felt a spark of hope. Yet, despite the warmth beginning to bloom in her chest, fear lingered at the edges. Could she trust a vampire? Could she trust herself to survive the dangers that surely awaited her in his world? And most importantly, could she ever allow herself to love again after the pain she had endured? The carriage stopped before a towering castle, its black stone walls stretching toward the sky like claws. Torches flickered along the battlements, casting an otherworldly glow over the rain-slicked stones. Kale led her inside, the halls echoing with the sound of their footsteps. Shadows shifted in the corners, and whispers of a language older than time brushed against her ears. "This is my home," Kale said, his voice softer now, almost reverent. "You will stay here and you will be safe. But more than that, you will learn what it means to live truly, to be seen and known." Alara's gaze wandered across the vast halls, the tapestries depicting battles and legends of the vampire clans, the statues of ancestors who had ruled for centuries. Everything about this place was magnificent, terrifying and mesmerizing all at once. She felt small and fragile, yet also strangely empowered. As she was shown to her room, a tall chamber with windows overlooking the stormy forest, Alara finally allowed herself to sit and breathe. The events of the day had been overwhelming, but a quiet sense of anticipation settled in her chest. She knew that her life had changed forever the moment she had taken Kale's hand. And yet, even as she tried to calm her racing heart, she could not shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that in the darkness of Kale's world, she would face trials and dangers she could not yet imagine. But she also knew that, perhaps for the first time in her life, she was ready to face them, because Kale had seen her, truly seen her, and in doing so had lit a fire within her soul. And for a woman who had been broken and abandoned, that fire was more precious than anything she had ever known. Outside, the storm raged on, the wind howling through the castle towers. But inside, Alara felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she was no longer a bride abandoned by the world. Perhaps, in the hands of the alpha vampire, she could discover a power and courage she had never known. And deep in the shadows, Kale watched her, a flicker of curiosity and admiration in his red eyes. He knew the road ahead would be treacherous, filled with enemies, challenges, and the weight of his own cursed past. But in that moment, as he observed the fragile, wounded woman who had stepped into his world, he felt something long buried stir within him. Something dangerous, something beautiful, something like hope. The night stretched on, full of whispers and secrets, as two souls, wounded and wary, began a journey neither of them could yet fully understand. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled like the echo of a destiny about to unfold. The morning after the storm, the castle was quiet, yet alive with a strange energy. Sunlight barely pierced the thick black stone walls, falling in pale streams across the cold marble floors. Lady Alara awoke in her chamber, the memory of last night still fresh, the touch of Kale's hand, the warmth of his gaze, the promise in his words. She could hardly believe she was here, in the world of the alpha vampire, a world both beautiful and terrifying. Alara rose and walked to the window. The forest stretched endlessly beyond the castle, dark and mysterious. Mist curled around the trees like ghosts, hiding paths that only Kale and his kind could navigate safely. The castle itself seemed alive. Shadows shifted as if they had minds of their own, and the walls hummed with a subtle power that made her skin tingle. Kale entered the room silently as though he had been there all along. He moved with the grace of a predator, yet his presence was comforting rather than frightening. "Good morning," he said, his voice low and steady. "I trust you slept well." Alara hesitated. I did, I think," she replied, "though everything still feels unreal." Kale stepped closer, his eyes studying her intently. "Unreal is the beginning of understanding," he said. "This world is not like the one you left behind. Here, strength and courage matter more than appearances. Here, the heart is what defines you." Alara's heart ached at the memory of Cedric, her former fiancé, who had judged her for her appearance rather than her courage or kindness. In Kale's presence, she felt seen, respected, even admired, and yet she feared she was not ready for this new world. Kale extended his hand again. "Come, I will show you the halls of the castle, and you will begin to understand what it means to live here." As they walked through the corridors, Alara felt a mix of fear and fascination. The halls were vast and silent, lined with ancient tapestries that told stories of battles and victories long forgotten. Statues of warriors and rulers gazed down at her, their eyes seeming to follow her every move. She noticed the flicker of candlelight in the shadows, and for a moment she thought she heard whispers, old voices speaking in a language she could not understand. "This castle has been here for centuries," Kale explained. "It holds the history of my clan, the victories and losses, the joys and sorrows, and now you are a part of it." Alara's breath caught. "Me, a part of this?" Kale's eyes softened, but his tone remained firm. "Yes, Alara, you are no ordinary woman. You have survived heartbreak, shame, and rejection, and yet you stand here. That is strength. That is courage. That is what matters here." They entered a large hall where Kale's council awaited. Vampires of various ages and powers were seated along long benches, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Some whispered to each other as Alara entered, and she could feel the weight of their scrutiny. She felt small and out of place, but Kale's presence beside her steadied her. "This is Alara," Kale said, his voice carrying across the hall. "She is with me now, and she will learn what it means to be seen for who she truly is." Murmurs filled the room, some questioning, some approving. Alara held her head high, refusing to let fear show. She realized that this was a test, not of magic or combat, but of spirit. The alpha vampire did not bring her here to protect her from the world. He brought her here to see if she could face it, and to discover her own strength. Over the next few days, Kale put her through subtle trials. She was guided through hidden corridors that twisted like labyrinths, each turn filled with whispers and shadows that tested her courage. She was asked to resist the illusions of other vampires, some appearing as terrifying creatures, others as figures from her past. Each challenge forced her to confront fear, doubt, and insecurity. Alara discovered that Kale was not merely observing her, he was teaching her. Every trial, every test, was meant to strengthen her spirit, to help her realize that she was more than what the world had told her she was. And as she faced each challenge, she began to see Kale in a new light, not as a predator but as a teacher, a protector, and someone who believed in her even when she did not believe in herself. One evening, as the sun set behind the castle walls, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Kale led her to the highest tower. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of the forest and the distant mountains. "Look out there," Kale said, gesturing to the horizon. "This is my world. Dangerous, yes, but beautiful. And it is a world you can belong to if you are willing to face its truths." Alara looked out over the vast lands, the forests, rivers, and mountains stretching beyond what her eyes could see. She felt a thrill of excitement and also a pang of fear. Everything was new, everything was unknown, and yet something inside her stirred with longing, a desire to belong, to be brave, to be more than she had ever been. "Kale," she said softly, I want to be brave. "But I am afraid." Kale's gaze softened. "Fear is not weakness. It is the first step toward courage. You will learn to face it, and in doing so, you will discover who you truly are." Days turned into weeks, and Alara began to grow into her new life. She explored the castle's hidden libraries, where ancient tomes whispered secrets of magic and history. She wandered the moonlit gardens, learning the names of plants and their mystical properties. She began to understand the rules of Kale's world, the delicate balance of power, and the importance of respect, courage, and wisdom. Through it all, Kale watched her closely. He admired her resilience, her curiosity, and the way she refused to be intimidated by the supernatural world around her. And yet, he also felt something stirring in himself, a feeling he had long buried beneath centuries of duty and pain. One evening, as they walked through the gardens under a sky full of stars, Kale stopped and turned to her. "Alara," he said, his voice softer than usual, "do you understand what you are becoming?" She shook her head. I think so, but it is still so overwhelming. Everything here is so different." "Different, yes," Kale said, stepping closer. "But it is also beautiful, and you, Alara, are part of that beauty. You have strength, courage, and a heart that is capable of great love. Do not doubt yourself." Alara felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of hope and fear. She wanted to trust him, to believe in herself, but the memories of Cedric's rejection still lingered, like a shadow she could not fully shake. Kale seemed to sense her doubt. "You fear because you have been hurt," he said gently. "But here you are safe. And more than that, you are seen, truly seen. That is something most never experience, even in a lifetime." As the night deepened, the moon rose high above the castle, casting silver light across the gardens. Alara felt a strange peace settle over her. For the first time in months, she felt that perhaps she could be more than her pain. Perhaps she could be brave, strong, and even happy. But the peace was fragile. Kale's world was full of shadows, and not all of them were friendly. Rumors of rival vampires and ancient curses had reached the castle, whispering of danger and betrayal. And though Alara felt safe with Kale, She could sense that challenges lay ahead, challenges that would test her courage, her spirit, and even her heart. One night, as they returned to the castle after exploring a hidden grove, Kale stopped at the top of the main staircase. His eyes were dark, filled with an emotion she could not name. "Alara," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper, "you have done well. But know this, the world outside these walls is not kind. And some dangers will come for you, simply because of who you are now, because of what you mean to me." Alara's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, fear and curiosity mingling in her voice. Kale's hand brushed against hers, a silent reassurance. "I mean that your courage, your heart, and your presence have already changed me. And change is not always welcomed by those who fear it. Be ready, Alara. You are stronger than you realize, but strength alone may not be enough." That night, Alara lay in her chamber, staring at the ceiling, the words repeating in her mind. She realized that her journey had only just begun. She had left the world that had rejected her, entered a realm of shadows and power, and taken the first steps toward becoming someone she had never imagined she could be. And somewhere in the darkness of the castle, Kale watched over her, his thoughts tangled with concern and admiration, knowing that the path ahead would be dangerous, and that the bond forming between them would be tested in ways neither could yet foresee. As the moonlight fell on the castle towers, the wind whispered through the stone halls, carrying secrets of the night and the promise of challenges yet to come. Alara closed her eyes, feeling the first true spark of hope in her heart, unaware of the trials, revelations, and truths that awaited her in the days ahead. The Alpha's claim on her life and her heart was only beginning, and the shadows of the castle seemed to hum with anticipation of what was yet to come. The moon hung low in the sky, a pale lantern casting silver light across the northern forest. From the castle towers, Lady Alara gazed down at the rolling trees, their branches swaying in the night wind. She had been in Kale's world for weeks now, and though she was growing stronger, braver, and more certain of herself, a shadow of fear lingered in her chest. This world was beautiful, yes, but it was also dangerous, and she could feel the weight of secrets pressing down on her. Kale stood silently beside her, his red eyes reflecting the moonlight. He did not speak, but she could sense his thoughts, heavy with care and calculation. For centuries, Kale had carried burdens that no human could imagine. He had ruled his clans with authority and fear, yet his heart was trapped in a cage built from centuries of loss, betrayal, and regret. "Alara," he finally said, his voice low, almost hesitant, "there is something you must know, something that concerns not only me but the life you now share with mine." Alara turned to him, her heart tightening. "What is it?" she asked softly, bracing herself. Kale's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "Long ago, before you were born, a rival of mine cursed me. A spell was cast to prevent me from ever loving a mortal woman without endangering her life. To love fully meant to risk death, madness, or worse for the one I cherished. I have lived with this curse for centuries, and I thought I would never find someone who could withstand it." Alara's breath caught. She had expected danger, tests of courage, perhaps even magic that could harm her, but she had never expected this, an ancient curse that bound the heart of the alpha vampire himself. "You mean you cannot love freely?" she whispered. Kale's hand brushed hers. "I have loved before, Alara, but it has always been from a distance, from shadows. I have learned to hide my feelings to protect those I care for. But you are different. Your spirit is strong, your heart is brave. And I fear that loving you may finally break me or destroy you." Alara looked into his eyes, and for the first time she saw not just the alpha, the predator, or the ruler, but the man beneath. A man who had endured centuries of loneliness, who had been forced to hide his heart for fear of losing what he loved most. She felt a surge of compassion, but also a determination she had not known before. "I do not care about curses," she said firmly. "I have been abandoned and scorned by the world. I have felt rejection and shame. If loving you is dangerous, then I am ready. I will face it. Whatever comes, I will stand by you." Kale's red eyes softened, a flicker of admiration and something deeper shining through. He wanted to warn her, to protect her, but he also felt the stirrings of a hope long buried. Perhaps she was the one who could finally change the course of his life. The next days were filled with training and lessons. Kale taught Alara how to sense the energy of the castle, how to navigate the forest paths without fear, and how to protect herself against supernatural forces that lurked unseen. He also showed her the history of his clan, the victories, the betrayals, the losses that had shaped the Alpha into the man he was. Alara listened and learned, growing stronger, braver, and more confident in herself. She discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. She faced illusions of shadow creatures that tested her mind, traps that tested her agility, and whispered temptations meant to weaken her resolve. Each challenge made her more certain of her place by Kale's side, but even as she grew stronger, a storm of danger approached. Whispers reached the castle of a rival vampire, jealous and vengeful, who resented Kale's power and feared his growing bond with Alara. This rival had long sought to challenge Kale and seize control of the northern clans, and now, with a mortal woman in Kale's life, the threat had become personal. One night, under a blood-red moon, the rival struck. The castle alarms rang through the halls and shadows flickered like living things. Alara, though frightened, moved quickly, following Kale's instructions. Together, they navigated the twisting corridors, evading traps and warding off attackers. The rival's minions, vampires and creatures twisted by dark magic, attacked with speed and ferocity. Alara felt the weight of fear pressing against her chest, but she remembered Kale's lessons. She focused, controlled her breathing, and used her courage to face the danger. Kale moved beside her, protective yet trusting her to act. For the first time, she felt a true partnership, not just of hearts but of strength and will. They reached the central hall, where the rival vampire awaited. The air crackled with energy, tension, and unspoken threats. The rival sneered, his eyes dark with malice. "So the Alpha has chosen a mortal," he hissed. "Do you truly believe she belongs here, Kale? One wrong step and she will die and you will regret it." Kale's gaze sharpened. "She is stronger than you think, and she is mine. You will not harm her." Alara felt her heart race. She had been terrified at the thought of danger, but now, standing in the heart of the castle, facing a being who meant to harm her, she realized something powerful. She was no longer a helpless bride abandoned by the world. She was a woman who could face fear, who could stand beside the Alpha, and who could fight for the life she wanted. The rival struck suddenly, a blur of motion aimed at Kale. Alara acted instinctively, raising her arms in a protective stance. A barrier of light and energy, one she had been learning to summon under Kale's guidance, flared around her. The force pushed the rival back, and for a moment the hall was still, charged with tension and the lingering scent of magic. Kale's eyes met hers, filled with pride and relief. "You did well," he said, his voice steady but tinged with awe. "Do you understand now? You are more powerful than you realize." Alara's chest swelled with a mix of fear, pride, and excitement. She had faced danger, and she had not faltered. The realization that she could be brave, strong, and capable, even in a world of shadows and magic, filled her with a quiet triumph. But the battle was not yet over. The rival vampire had retreated, but the threat remained. Kale's face darkened with worry. "He will return," Kale said quietly, "and next time he will not be so easily stopped." Alara felt a shiver of fear, but also a spark of determination. She would not run. She would stand by Kale, no matter what dangers came. The bond between them, fragile but growing, was a source of strength, a light in the darkness that surrounded them. As the night deepened, Kale led her to the tower again, where the moonlight spilled across the stone floor. He took her hand in his, and for a moment they simply stood together silent, the world outside forgotten. "Ilara," he said softly, "you have changed more than you know, and I have changed because of you. You have shown me something I thought I would never feel again: hope, courage, and the possibility of love." Ilara felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had been abandoned, scorned, and rejected, but in this dark, magical world, she had found someone who saw her not for her body, not for her mistakes, but for her heart. She felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of longing and trust, and realized that she was beginning to love him, not just the powerful alpha but the man beneath. Yet, even in this quiet moment, tension lingered in the air. Shadows shifted at the edges of her vision, and a faint whisper of danger reminded her that the world outside their tower was still full of enemies, waiting for any sign of weakness. Kale's eyes, intense and red, met hers. "Tomorrow, the rival will strike again. We must be ready. But tonight, know this: you are safe with me, and together we will face whatever comes." Ilara nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. The road ahead would be treacherous, filled with tests, trials, and battles that would challenge her in ways she had never imagined. But she also knew something she had never known before: that she was not alone, that she was stronger than she had believed, and that love, unexpected, complicated, and terrifying, was blooming in the heart of the alpha vampire. The night stretched on, full of whispered secrets, shadows, and unspoken promises, and as Ilara lay down to rest, she realized that she had crossed a threshold. She was no longer a broken bride, abandoned and humiliated. She was a woman of courage, hope, and growing power, ready to face the darkness, ready to stand beside Kale, and ready to embrace whatever destiny awaited her. But somewhere in the shadows of the castle, the rival watched and waited, his plans dark and unyielding. And though Kale and Ilara had grown closer, stronger, and braver together, the true test of their bond, their courage, and their love was yet to come. The blood-red moon cast its light across the forest, whispering of secrets, shadows, and a destiny that neither Ilara nor Kale could yet fully understand. And in that light, two hearts, fragile yet determined, beat in unison, preparing for the trials that would define them and the love that would bind them forever. The castle lay silent under the silver light of the full moon, its towers casting long shadows over the forest below. Lady Ilara stood at the highest balcony, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the scent of rain-soaked earth and the faint tang of distant danger. She had grown stronger in the weeks she had spent in Kale's world, braver and more certain of herself. Yet tonight, she felt a tension in the air, a promise that the night would test her courage like never before. Kale approached silently, his red eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he observed the horizon, muscles taut, senses alert. The rival vampire had not forgotten them, and Kale knew this would be the final confrontation. "Ilara," he said finally, his voice low and steady, "tonight we face him, the one who would take everything from us. But you must know your strength, your courage, and your heart will be the key. We stand together as equals or not at all." Ilara met his gaze, her own fear tempered by determination. "I am ready, Kale. I will not run. I will stand with you." A shadow moved in the distance, barely visible against the dark forest. The rival vampire had come, and his minions followed, silent and deadly. Ilara felt her heart beat faster, but she held Kale's hand, drawing strength from his presence. She had faced illusions, tests, and danger before, but this was real, and it was more terrifying than anything she had imagined. The rival stepped into the moonlight, his dark eyes gleaming with malice. "So, the Alpha has chosen a mortal to fight by his side," he sneered. "Do you truly believe she can survive what comes? Do you believe she can stand against centuries of power?" Kale's gaze did not waver. "She has already survived what you cannot imagine, and together we are stronger than you." The rival lunged, and the night erupted into motion. Shadows twisted, creatures of dark magic appeared, and the castle seemed to come alive with energy. Alara acted instinctively, using the skills Kale had taught her. She moved with precision, using her courage as her weapon, and the magic she had begun to control flared to life in her hands. Kale fought beside her, his strength and speed unmatched. Yet he never overshadowed her. He guided her, protected her when necessary, and allowed her to act when she could. The bond between them was evident in every movement, the trust, the care, and the growing love that connected them like an invisible thread. Alara faced the rival directly, her heart steady despite the fear. "You will not harm us," she said firmly. "We will not allow it." The rival laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. "You think words can protect you. You think courage alone will save you." But Alara did not falter. She remembered Kale's teachings. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to act in spite of it. She focused her mind, her energy, and her heart, and a brilliant light surged from her hands, illuminating the hall with pure power. The rival staggered, his minions faltering as the force of Alara's will pushed against them. Kale saw the change in her. The mortal woman he had claimed, the bride abandoned by the world, had become a warrior in her own right. Her courage, her heart, and her strength had grown beyond his expectations. And as he watched her stand, unyielding, he realized that love was not a weakness. It was the greatest power they possessed together. The rivals struck again, stronger and faster, but Kale and Alara moved as one. Their attacks were synchronized, their defenses perfect. They were no longer master and student, alpha and mortal. They were partners, equals in strength, courage, and heart. Finally, Kale seized the rival, holding him with a strength that seemed impossible for even a vampire. "It is over," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "You will not harm us, nor anyone else under my protection." Alara stepped forward, her hands glowing with a final surge of energy. She spoke with confidence and power. "Leave now and never return. Your darkness has no place here." The rival's eyes widened, and for the first time he seemed afraid. He vanished into the shadows with a hiss, leaving the castle silent once more. The threat was gone, but the echoes of the battle lingered in the air. Kale released his hold and turned to Alara. "You were magnificent," he said, his voice soft, filled with pride. "I could not have faced him without you." Alara's chest heaved, not from exhaustion alone, but from the overwhelming mix of fear, relief, and triumph. "We faced him together," she replied. "I was not alone." Kale's eyes softened as he took her hands in his. "No, you were never alone, and you never will be. You have shown me something I thought I had lost forever, the strength to love fully without fear." Alara felt warmth spread through her heart. She had been broken, abandoned, and scorned. Yet here she was, standing victorious beside the alpha vampire who had seen her, believed in her, and cherished her. She realized that she had not only survived the darkness but had become stronger because of it. The moonlight bathed the castle in silver, and Kale led her to the central hall. There, beneath the grand arches and the flickering torches, he spoke words that would change both their lives forever. "Alara," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "you have broken the chains of my past, my curse, and my loneliness. With your courage and your love, you have shown me that even centuries of sorrow can be healed." Alara looked into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability and the strength within him. She felt a surge of emotion, a mix of love, pride, and relief. "Kale, I love you," she whispered, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. Kale's hand rose to her cheek, his thumb brushing gently against her skin. "And I love you, Alara," he said. "You are more than I ever dreamed. You are the heart I thought I had lost forever." Together, they performed the ancient ritual that would break the curse, a binding of trust, courage, and pure love. Alara's hand glowed with light as she channeled her energy into the bond, and Kale's strength flowed into her, filling the room with warmth and power. Shadows fled before them, and the castle seemed to breathe, alive with the magic of their hearts and their courage. When the ritual was complete, the air felt lighter, the castle brighter. The curse that had held Kale's heart for centuries was gone, and with it, the fear that had once shadowed their love. They stood together, hands clasped, gazing at each other in the quiet aftermath. The battle was over, the curse broken, and their bond stronger than ever. The castle, once filled with shadows and secrets, now felt alive with hope, love, and possibility. Kale drew Elara close, resting his forehead against hers. "You were never too much, Elara," he whispered. "You were always everything. And now we face the world together, stronger, braver, and united." Elara smiled, feeling a joy she had never known. She had been abandoned, humiliated, and left to doubt herself, yet here she was, victorious, loved, and cherished. She realized that the pain she had endured had led her to this moment, to Kale, and to a life filled with courage, magic, and love. As they stood together, the first rays of dawn touched the castle towers. The sun's light mingled with the moon's silver glow, casting a warm, golden sheen over the forest and the stone walls. It was a new beginning, a world where darkness had been faced, courage had triumphed, and love had finally been free. Kale and Elara stepped onto the balcony, looking out over the lands they would protect together. The forest stretched endlessly, mysterious and beautiful, and the castle behind them seemed to hum with life. "Whatever comes next," Kale said, his voice strong and certain, "we will face it together. No darkness, no curse, no enemy can touch us if we remain united." Elara squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth and strength in his grip. "Together," she agreed, her voice steady, filled with hope. And as the wind whispered through the castle towers, carrying the scent of the forest and the promise of new adventures, they stood side by side, two hearts united, ready to face whatever destiny awaited them. For Elara, the broken bride was gone. In her place stood a woman of courage, strength, and love, seen, cherished, and unstoppable. And for Kale, the alpha vampire, centuries of solitude and sorrow had ended. In her he had found hope, redemption, and the heart he thought he had lost forever. The castle, the forest, and the night sky bore witness to a love that had overcome fear, darkness, and despair, a love that would endure for eternity. Together they stepped into the light of a new dawn, ready to write their story, strong, fearless, and forever united.